Northeast Asia is more complicated because of the Korean Peninsula. China has played a key role in the six-party talks. Although the problem of North Korea will take time to resolve, the situation there has become much more relaxed in recent months, and prospects for peace are much better. China's relations with Japan improved significantly after Shinzo Abe took over as Prime Minister, and reciprocating Prime Minister Abe's gesture of visiting China first, Prime Minister Wen Jiabao turned on his charm when he visited Japan a few months ago. And under Prime Minister Fukuda, bilateral relations will get better. Both China and South Korea see ASEAN plus 3, which is ASEAN plus Japan, Korea, and China, as being very important to improve cooperation in Northeast Asia. Japan is however concerned that it should not be confined to ASEAN plus 3 and wants to promote parallel tracks in APEC, which includes the US, and in the East Asia Summit, which includes India and Australia as well. In fact, ASEAN, China, Japan, and Korea are all happy to pursue these three tracks simultaneously: APEC, EAS, and ASEAN plus 3. The difference is one of emphasis, which we can live with. APEC is important because it brings the two sides of the Pacific together. After 3 terrible wars, the US is completely engaged in our part of the world. And should one day the US disengage, it will be a darker and more dangerous world for all of us. APEC is developing well. We had a good meeting in Sydney recently and agreed to consider the possibility of a free trade area in Asia Pacific as a long-term possibility. The habit of meeting helps us to overcome problems which can suddenly arise. I remember clearly the events after the EP3 fighting incident over Hainan in April 2001, when Sino-US relations took a sudden plunge and became very tense. Fortunately, there was an APEC trade ministers meeting scheduled in Shanghai in June. Ambassador Tarek was the first US cabinet secretary as the US trade representative to visit China after the incident. He made friendly remarks, which were immediately reported back to Beijing. And bilateral relations got better after that, and Chinese Commerce Minister Xu Guangsheng and Ambassador Tarek reached agreement on China's entry to the WTO after a midnight session. After September 11, the US and China became allies in the war against terrorism. And in October, when President Bush flew into Shanghai for the APEC leaders summit, this time Chinese fighter aeroplanes escorted US Air Force One into Chinese airspace. From April to October, the position turned 180 degrees. Because no relationship in the world is more important than Sino-US relations, APEC must remain the premier organization in our region. However, we have to be clear that both Hong Kong and Taiwan participate in APEC as economies and not as countries. Sino-Indian relations will become more important in the coming decades. Historically, there was little political contact between these two great civilizations because of the Himalayas. There was only war between them in 1962, a war which India lost and which remains a scar in India's society today. But bilateral relations have since gotten much better. And last year, the Natula Pass between Tibet and Sikkim was reopened after 44 years. The countries of Southeast Asia, which are in between China and India, and greatly influenced by them over the centuries, have a strong interest in seeing good relations between these two giants. And the East Asia Summit is a forum which brings them together. Both China and India are improving their role and real link to Southeast Asia, which also link them to each other. And the present situation in Myanmar is one which concerns both of them. In order to create better conditions for Asian integration, India has decided to rebuild the Ancient Buddhist University of Nalanda and offer it as a project to improve intercivilizational understanding and cooperation. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has proposed this to the East Asia Summit leaders. For hundreds of years, Nalanda attracted students from all over Asia, including the great Chinese monks Farsian, Xuanzang, and Yi Jing. And the university taught not only Buddhism, but also science, mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, and other subjects. And these are projects which have earned the support of the governments in China, Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. Beyond regional organizations, however, China has to play a bigger role in international organizations like the UN and the WTO. So far, China's general approach has been to play defense. In the coming years, however, China needs to play a responsible leadership role together with the US, the EU, and others. Developing countries expect this of China as a leading developing country. If the Doha round cannot be concluded in the coming months, China must work with the other major trading nations to keep the multilateral trading system going. After all, China is a major beneficiary of the multilateral trading system. On energy security and on climate change, China should also play a positive role. At the APEC Business Summit in Sydney recently, President Hu Jintao assured everyone that China will play the role of a responsible country. This is important because without the full participation of the US, China, and India, there can be no effective action to slow down global warming. There's one other area where China's involvement in global coordination is vital, and that is in the financial field. Exchange rates, trade surpluses, and official reserves are not the only problems. Among the G8 countries, coordination of macroeconomic policy and financial management is well established. Without China's participation, however, many issues cannot be properly addressed. As a stakeholder in the global system, China has both rights and responsibilities. As the stakes are considerable, China should be brought into the G8 earlier rather than later. The wise management of China's external relations will help create favorable conditions for China's economic development and for global peace. As China gains its strategic weight, it is important for the Chinese people to remain mindful of Deng Xiaoping's advice. Excessive nationalism will add to the fear of China and conscribe China's policy options. For example, how Chinese spectators behave during the coming Olympic Games in the eyes of the world, when billions of eyeballs will be on Beijing, will set international views of China for years to come. China is not the sole arbiter of its strategic environment. The other major powers, especially the US, must also be prepared to accommodate China's legitimate interests. So long as these two big players, China and the US, remain on the same table, the game is on for the rest of us. The day when one or the other leaves the table will be much more difficult. Keeping the game going is a challenge of China's peaceful emergence in this century. Thank you very much.